Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan, live. Status Coup a little bit earlier today. We're going to have a double whammy today. Our early live stream right now, and then regular live stream time at 5 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have human rights attorney Stephen Donziger on at 5 o'clock Eastern to discuss the unfortunate decision by the Supreme Court not to hear his appeal case in his contempt of court, absurd contempt of court decision in the Chevron political prosecution against Donziger that caused him to be under house arrest and then federal prison for many years. So that'll be at 5 o'clock Eastern. Apologies that we're late today. When you have a very small crew and not a lot of time to do the things you need to do, unfortunately, sometimes you're late. So what happened today was we had this hearing, another congressional hearing on East Palestine, which to me, and we're going to go through it, was an absolute joke. At this point, I'd rather than not have the hearings than have this stupidity and gaslighting and nonsense. But they had this hearing and it was about, I think it was an hour and a half or something like that. Colin, who's our only editor right now, Colin was recording Tina Desiree Berg's show. Tina pre-records her right-wing insanity report interviews, and Colin handles that. So I was going through the 75-minute congressional hearing to find the clips that I want to show you and react to. So then I had to find the clips, send it to Colin, who had to edit it. Before you know it, it's already 1:30. And we're not ready. So apologies for that. But we do have a ton of clips that we want to go through on, I believe this is the second or third congressional hearing on the East Palestine derailment and controlled burn, i.e. uncontrolled burn. There was a lot of gaslighting that went on. Colin, did we change the headline to this, by the way, to that, whatever Zaina said? Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. Well, if we can change the headline to the other option that I had texted you guys. I think it was EPA GASLIGHTS or something like that, because I think that's more accurate for this, if we can. But this hearing, you had a federal EPA official gaslighting the people of East Palestine. You had an Ohio EPA official gaslighting the people of East Palestine. You had the health supervisor for Columbia County, which is what East Palestine is, the county that East Palestine resides in my view, gaslighting and lying to the people of East Palestine. By my count, it took a half hour into this hearing for any mention of the health problems that residents are having. And they only ticked off a few health problems residents were having. So we're going to get into all of it. Smash that like button so we can get more people watching right now. We have about 70 people watching. We got to get a whole lot more people watching, a whole lot more people watching this important broadcast, because if we don't keep this in the news, who else is going to keep it in the news? I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but there are very few outlets still covering this environmental crime, if you ask me, if you ask me. Maybe a YouTube channel or two are covering this, but other than that, the mainstream media has moved on. Independent media was not covering it that much to begin with. So we need your support so we can keep this in the news. I am talking to Lewis right now and seeing if we can continue to fund sending him back to East Palestine, which involves you and folks signing up as Status Coup members. So hopefully we'll get some more member signups. Before I get into this stream, let me just give some shout outs in case I missed any member signups. We might have a resident come on from East Palestine to react to some of this. By the way, we did welcome new Status Coup member C. It just says C. I don't know your full name, C, but thank you for signing up. Hopefully we get some more member signups. So there is a town hall in East Palestine this afternoon, I believe at 4:30 Eastern time. So that's 1:30 Pacific. I asked residents if it would be live streamed. I haven't heard back yet. So if there is a link and if it is going to be live streamed, We'll post that here if you'd like to watch it. It's going to be with residents. I believe a representative from Norfolk Southern is going to be there, as well as the EPA. So that's coming up a little bit later. Let me just text the resident one more time so she knows we're live. Okay, live now. Click on link if and when you could join. All right, so let's get to this. This was a congressional subcommittee that has met to react to the East Palestine disaster. In this hearing, Norfolk Southern was not present. Interesting. Norfolk Southern and its officials were not present. Colin, let's play the first clip that I sent you. And please, please, please smash that like button so we can get this out to more people.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Today, the subcommittee is holding a hearing on the Norfolk Southern train derailment, but without a representative from the company responsible for this disaster and for the cleanup. And I don't think it's acceptable that the committee Republicans did not invite Norfolk Southern to participate in this hearing. And unfortunately, this omission will result in the American people in this committee being deprived of the answers we all deserve directly from the company. Most of all, the people of East Palestine deserve answers. It's certainly good that we're having this hearing today, but Norfolk Southern should be here. Norfolk Southern caused this mess, and they're tasked with cleaning it up, not the Environmental Protection Agency or the Ohio EPA or the Columbiana County Health Department. The company should have to explain what happened, how they plan to prevent it from happening again, and what more must be done to ensure the long-term health and safety of the community.
So obviously Republicans have a narrow majority in the House, so they dictate what witnesses come. They could subpoena if they choose. They could have subpoenaed Norfolk Southern officials to attend. But Norfolk Southern, Alan Shaw, the CEO, he came for his Senate hearing. He gave his lawyered up answers, and they were very, very lawyered up, his answers in his Senate hearing, which I think was 2 weeks ago. There was a few tough questions against Alan Shaw in the Senate hearing. Not surprisingly, Bernie Sanders was the toughest on Alan Shaw. And most of what Alan Shaw, the Norfolk Southern CEO, gave was a bunch of vague, we're going to do the right thing. He wouldn't answer if he's going to provide health care to the sick residents of East Palestine, would not really answer questions as far as the actual derailment, the decision to do a controlled burn or uncontrolled burn, because there's really no such thing as a controlled burn. That's just a bullshit term. But Republicans not inviting the Norfolk Southern CEO, I'm not surprised by it. I feel mixed because on one end, of course, they caused this. They should have to be at every hearing. But on the other end, I know it's going to be a lot of word salad, vague answers, nonsense, lies. And I know that most of these politicians who have taken money from Norfolk Southern or Vanguard or BlackRock, which are significant owners in Norfolk Southern, aren't really going to challenge them and are just going to kind of pretend to be tough on Norfolk Southern, because that's how these things go, unfortunately. So it is kind of absurd that Norfolk Southern was not there. But I want to play this clip, and some of you might have seen some of this content from us. Some of you have not. Norfolk Southern not being invited or not having to come is kind of a continuation of not just the response to the East Palestine disaster, which today, by the way, is 53 days since this happened. So it's still relatively new. If this happened in like a European country or countries that have somewhat of a responsible media that don't just cover things for a few days and then move on, it might still be covered in some better countries as far as their media. But 53 days, so we're inching towards the 2-month anniversary since this derailment. You got a lot of residents we're speaking to still sick. You got a lot of residents who are getting the runaround when they call Norfolk Southern. I've personally heard calls that residents have made to Norfolk Southern that were recorded, and Norfolk Southern is basically gaslighting them, telling them, hey, too bad. Here's what we'll give you. We're not going to pay your mortgage. We're not going to pay to permanently relocate you. If you're in Pennsylvania, which we'll get to a little bit later, good luck getting reimbursement from Norfolk Southern, even though a lot of Western Pennsylvania has been negatively affected through contamination, health problems. But I want to show this clip because this is a continuation. Norfolk Southern not having to show up is kind of a continuation of literally this railroad company running our government and basically having control over politicians for 2 centuries. Let's play this clip, Colin. This was from a local Pennsylvania House hearing a few weeks ago.
I have dealt with Norfolk Southern in my capacity as Borough Council President, and I was told in no uncertain terms by multiple different Pennsylvania departments, I've heard from DCED, from PUC, from PennDOT, that we've given away our power to do anything about these railroads. And when it was mentioned earlier that the quote from Norfolk Southern was, "We have over 200 years of experience," I was told we gave away our rights 200 years ago, actually was the quote that I was told in trying to deal with Norfolk Southern from a local government perspective. I was very struck and shocked and a little bit horrified earlier when it was mentioned that we have Department of Environmental Protection, we have emergency management, we have all of these different layers of things working together, focusing on statistical models, et cetera. But ultimately, it sounds as if the decision about what to do was just made by Norfolk Southern. And have we just given away our rights to do anything about these railroads that go through our communities? My law office, where I'm a sole practitioner, is across the street from a Norfolk Southern train track. If we have a derailment, I'll die that moment. So I'm very concerned that we have given away our power to do anything about these derailments. Is there anything that local government can do? Is there anything that we as state government can do to take back some of that power? What is the command structure such that it was just allowed to a decision to burn 5 cars worth of very terrifying materials to the average person? I'm not a scientist, but these things are terrifying to the average person. What kind of command structure is there, and what can we put in place, if anything, as legislators, to take back some of that power so that you don't have very educated, smart people looking at statistical models, but ultimately saying, okay, Norfolk Southern, if you want to burn your train cars full of stuff, I guess it's up to you.
I'm here with Kristen. We're in Darlington, Pennsylvania. We're halfway through a meeting here with several of the Pennsylvania state representatives. I saw you in the back here with this. I'm just curious, first off, I guess, what your take on all of this is, and why you're actually out here today to come see this.
Well, I applauded the last representative when she said, you know, we have no control over our federal railways. I mean, Norfolk Southern is dictating everything to us.
Thank you for that question. And as I indicated, there is a legal argument of what legally that they.
So I wanted to play that so you kind of get a flavor. Norfolk Southern is in the driver's seat here, and the EPA can say whatever the hell they want. And you're going to hear some clips from the EPA in a little bit. But Norfolk Southern, the criminal company that poisoned this village, is in the driver's seat. And that does not look like it's changing, unfortunately, which is kind of absurd. I mean, you would not put the arsonist who burned down your house in charge of rebuilding it. You would hopefully not put the police investigator or police officer who shot and killed the unarmed black man in charge of the investigation. I hope you would not involve your rapist in an investigation. But here in America, we're allowing this company to be heavily involved in the response. And really the only involvement by Norfolk Southern should be receiving all the bills for them to pay. That's it. They shouldn't be involved in testing. They shouldn't be involved in dealing with the residents. That should be the federal government dealing with this. But I digress. And please smash that like button, share this stream so we can get it out to more people. Right now, we got 140 people watching. Not everyone has pressed that like button. So we need more people to press that like button. Makes a big, big difference. And share the live stream too. Let's get to the next clip that I sent you, Colin.
Let me be clear. The residents of the greater East Palestine community are not alone. EPA will continue to be with them for as long as it takes to ensure their health and safety. Working within the Unified Command, EPA has more than 80 personnel on site. Since the derailment, EPA has been leading robust, multi-layered air quality testing using state-of-the-art technology in and around East Palestine. And that extensive monitoring has continued daily at 23 stations throughout the community. Since the fire was extinguished on February 8th, EPA monitors have not detected any volatile organic compounds above established levels of health concerns. EPA has also been assisting with indoor air screenings in homes through a voluntary program to keep residents informed. As of March 21st, more than 600 homes have been screened, and no sustained or elevated detections of chemicals have been identified.
So, interestingly enough, for those of you who have been following this story for a while, the EPA has kind of been in a bit of a supervisory role, assisting role to a company known as CTEH. CTEH is a company that is essentially the first responder for corporate polluters. So after the BP Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010 in Louisiana, BP had CTEH come. And what do you know? CTEH found the contamination, the water was fine. CTEH has been called and has been reporting about this in the New York Times and elsewhere, that this is kind of the cleanup company, so to speak, that produces data and results that the corporate polluters want them to produce. There's been accusations that they falsify data, manipulate data, produce lower numbers. So CTEH, not surprisingly, was hired by Norfolk Southern to do the original air testing as well as water testing. And the EPA was going into homes with the testers from CTEH, so basically Norfolk Southern testers. It's just a contractor working for Norfolk Southern. And EPA says they were doing their own testing. So CTEH was doing air testing, and Norfolk and EPA was doing separate testing. You don't really hear that in Deborah Shore, a federal EPA representative, in her answer. Well, we could tell you through our reporting, Louis DeAngelis, who has been on the ground for us twice in East Palestine. Right now, we're trying to come up with the funding to send him back for a third time. I am going next month back to Flint. It is the 9-year anniversary of the ongoing, let me repeat, ongoing, not past tense, present tense, Flint water crisis. While I'm in Michigan, I want to go to Kalamazoo. If you watched our show yesterday, there is a air poisoning story in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with toxic gas being released into a poor Black community, and that gas is now spreading to the white community. So while I'm in Michigan, I want to cover Flint, which, by the way, will be my 19th, count it, 19th reporting trip to Flint. And I also want to go to Kalamazoo, and we also want to send Louis back to East Palestine, and this costs money. So if you're not a Status Coup member, please, please, please sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month. We got, thankfully, a ton of great signups while Louis was on the ground. Kind of slowed down since we've been back, but we need to keep growing our membership because that's what pays for us to be on the ground in East Palestine, in Flint, in Kalamazoo, or wherever the hell we're going. And you can obviously leave super chats and donations as well. That also helps. So let's play when she is saying that the EPA has been doing thorough testing in air testing, and we have found nothing wrong. Well, Louis, because he was on the ground, and this is how you break big investigative stories, by being on the ground, by talking to the residents, by building relationships, by building sources. Louis came across a resident. Her name's Chrissy, and her home is right above Sulphur Run Creek, which is highly contaminated. And interestingly enough, the EPA and CTEH, the air testing numbers that they found in real time did not match the numbers that they put down on her sheet. This is a bit of a long clip, but we want to play the full clip for you so you could tell what this EPA official is testifying to Congress smells as bad, is as stinky and smelly as what East Palestine residents are inhaling. Let's play it.
So they come into the home, they note the smell that is in there. I guess what happens next at that point?
Yes, we go through each room to get readings. They went along the creek. They went down by the water to get readings. But when they got into the bedroom, my mother's bedroom and stepfather's bedroom, and the laundry room on the first floor is when the things started making the noise. It stayed a solid because different things can set those tests off.
And
a candle can leave residue, but this was a solid.
Right.
It was confirmed solid.
So to be clear, so they were using, was it a handheld test device?
Yes. And then they also had that one that you break the glass in front, and
it's more like a vacuum kind of tube. Yeah.
They did that too, but the handheld was what was really the issue was with the handheld.
And we have Chrissy's results, and we also have results from dozens of other residents at this point. This handheld device is, they've been using a various array of different versions of this device called the multi-ray. So there are many of them in question. There's a handful of issues with these, but we'll talk about those at the end of this. So the multi-ray device the handheld device that they're using, was it beeping or something, or was it just showing a higher level? What do you remember about that?
I know it was showing a higher level. I know it produced a sound to alert them, because they wouldn't have picked up on it, I don't think. When you're doing a test, you're talking, the homeowner is talking about concerns with them, so I'm sure it alerted through a beep. I can't honestly remember, but I'm almost certain it did.
Gotcha.
And now the EPA's, their device was longer and bigger, and it looked more detailed. And
so to be clear too, so CTEH is present, but also a member of the EPA is present doing their own testing, correct?
Yes, along with the CTEH group.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there'll be two, and then there's the sheriff that comes in too.
Gotcha. And that's consistent with other folks we've seen. We even have, cell phone recordings as well as surveillance recordings in other homes of that being the case, where you've got multiple parties present and also a police officer present as well. Yes. Do you recall the readings that you saw on the CTEH device, what they were?
Two. I know two in the laundry room, but the opening to the laundry room and bedroom, the door was open, so the two rooms joined together. So hers was a 2 inside the laundry room. He was probably from me to you away from her, and he had what he wasn't wanting to reveal, and she finally, after repeatedly asking him, got him to say a 2-3, and that would have been in my mom and stepfather's bedroom.
Gotcha.
Where they lay.
And so this is on the CTEH device, and so CTEH's results on your sheet and on many other sheets for VOCs at least is measured in parts per million. Do you recall if this was a test for VOCs or if this was a test for something else?
It said VOC on the paper.
Okay.
And that area where that should have been wrote as the 2, it did have the VOC number as a 1.
Gotcha. And and then it's also many of the ones on the sheet and are like it's 0.1 parts per million. Do you know if this was like a 0.2 or a solid 2? Because I think on your sheet, I know it's now listed as a 0.1 parts per million.
She said to him, I have a 2.
Okay.
So it might have been a 0.2,
right,
but I didn't know what they were talking about to say, is it a 0.2? Because she said, what do you have? And when he wouldn't answer, and she said it again on the third time, before the third time, she says, what, do you have a 2.9? And then he goes, no, I got a 2.3. What do you want me to do? And that's when she said, you need to call your supervisor because I'm calling mine.
Gotcha.
She showed concern. They said a special circumstance with the creek running underneath
your backyard.
Our backyard, and with the creek flooding in the basement when it's heavy rains. So, I mean, they genuinely took that serious, and show
Right.
concern with that.
Right. And
Very
regardless of if it was a 0.2 or a solid 2, that is not the number
No.
that was written on your sheet.
No,
No.
no, it was not.
Gotcha.
It was not, and I could not hear the phone conversation when she called her supervisor. I could not hear what the supervisor said to her.
And
So I
to be
don't
clear on the supervisor call as well, was this CTEH calling their supervisor or the
Yeah.
EPA?
Both.
Both. Okay.
She had made him call his, and she called hers, and they stepped away and he stepped away and did that. She was probably from me to the camera away, but I couldn't
Right.
hear what the supervisor was
Right.
saying.
And then I guess after both these, the EPA and CTEH separately called their supervisors, did they talk about any of this afterwards? Like in front of you? Did you? Yeah.
No. That's when the toxicologist for her company came down.
From CTEH.
Yes, they're toxicologists. But before that, his supervisor came down. But he was just telling me, well, you've got the crick. We're going to sort this out.
Right.
We'll figure this out.
So, and this is now a supervisor from the EPA also.
Yes.
So there's now a supervisor from the EPA here, in addition to the EPA person who was initially here.
Well, he had left.
Okay, so the initial EPA person leaves, and
Yes,
now a supervisor
and
comes.
the
Okay.
tester left. They both had left, and they had other readings to do in other homes. So they took off, and we waited. The EPA man came, and he had said to me about, well, we're going to have a toxicologist come down and explain this. And I said, okay, but, I'm concerned with the crick, the issues with the crick. I thought if they moved that boom, because they had it, I thought if they put a boom up here, they would stop the smell. Didn't understand a lot about this, but nobody was explaining it to us.
Right, and you're
So-
talking about putting a boom in the creek to...
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought if they put it down there, it wouldn't smell so bad. It would filter the water before it got. What I didn't realize is it was producing that gas up off the water, and that's what was filling our house up. They had it too close to the residents' homes.
So EPA's Deborah Shore, who sounded like everything's dandy in the air in East Palestine. EPA's testing is showing clean air outside and inside homes. Quite interesting that a resident there, I have no reason not to believe what she's saying. Not that it matters, but she's a religious person from what we found out. So doesn't seem like somebody would make something up. And she's saying that CTEH, which is the puppet contractor for Norfolk Southern, as well as EPA officials, they're testing in her home, which is above a contaminated creek. The home reeks and smells, by the way. The CTEH official acknowledged that it smells, and they're getting on their radar a reading that is concerning them. And I wrote it down here. I got a 2.3. What do you want me to do? By the way, a 0.2 parts per million, I believe, is the measurement. 0.2 is the top level. So anything up to 0.2 parts per million is considered okay in terms of the air reading. I would argue that is not okay, and even 0.2 is a threat to human health. But she's saying that she heard them say, I got a 2.3. What do you want me to do? And they both go to their separate camps, the EPA official and the CTEH official, to call their supervisors. And then when she gets the paperwork back, it's a 1 parts per million. Not my first rodeo, folks. The EPA has cheated in Flint on water lead testing. We broke a story years ago on the EPA fudging numbers in Flint. The EPA has looked the other way and knew that the state environmental agency was fudging numbers. But what's illuminating there, what's very illuminating, of course, we reached out to the EPA. Colin added their comment into the video, but the EPA says, well, you know, protocol, we can't discuss with you a private resident's home and testing in her home. Well, the private resident is publicly accusing you, the EPA, and the Norfolk Southern contractor of fudging the data, of manipulating the data, of lying about the air testing in her home, and they're testing for volatile organic compounds and other things. So you're not gonna talk to me, even though the resident is accusing you. And then a follow-up statement, they said, you know, we've reached out to the resident to discuss and clear up any confusion. When we asked the resident, she said, nobody's reached out to me for the EPA. So not only will they not talk to us about straight accusations of them cooking the data in East Palestine, and as Aaron Brockovich said to me in the case of Flint, if they're cooking the data in one home, you have to assume they're cooking the data across the board. If they're manipulating data, even in one case, you got to toss out the rest of it and redo it, preferably with independent testing. Because why would you, if you find them falsifying data in one case, why would you think, oh, this is just some bad apples. They're just doing it in this one home. They're not doing it anywhere else. Come on. But again, this hearing is just meant to check a box. These congressional hearings are just meant to check the box. These politicians, all of them spineless, most of them either getting money directly from Norfolk Southern or getting money from the parent companies that own Norfolk Southern, like BlackRock, like Vanguard, like JP Morgan, getting money from Wall Street that is heavily invested in the railroad industry, in addition to the fossil fuel industry, in addition to the pharmaceutical industry. So it's not necessarily, I tell young journalists who ask me, when you're trying to follow the money, it's not necessarily only about the direct donations where, oh, ExxonMobil is donating to this politician, so that politician does the bidding of ExxonMobil. Or, oh, Norfolk Southern is donating to this politician, so Norfolk Southern does the bidding of this. So this politician does the bidding of Norfolk Southern. It's the entire system. It's the entire bought government, because we live in the United Corporations of America. So you have to look at what industries that these politicians take shit tons of money from. What industries are heavily invested or own these, in this case, railroads. And it's Wall Street, BlackRock, private equity. So it's all of them. It's not, you don't need to just see a direct line where, well, look, this politician took 10,000 from Norfolk Southern, so they're just going to look the other way or do the bidding. Look at who else that politician is taking money from that might be invested in Norfolk Southern. So, and thank you for the super chat. Momo, $11. Nice haircut. Thanks for your work. True story. I cut my own hair about a week and a half ago. It did not go well. So I went to the barber right before a wedding because I was a groomsman for my best friend. And the barber looked at me in horror. And thankfully, the barber fixed me up. So thank you for the kind words. We do need your super chats. And please, 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 again, sign up as a Status Coup member today. You can sign up for $5 to $10 a month. This is how we're going to continue to fund on-the-ground reporting in East Palestine and elsewhere. If you came to this late, we want to send Lewis back to East Palestine soon. Next month, I'm going to Flint, the 9-year anniversary of the ongoing Flint water crisis. Also want to go to Kalamazoo, Michigan while I'm there because there is an air poisoning going on because of a corporate polluter, Graphic Packaging. So we want to do a lot of things and go a lot of places, but we need your help to do it. These trips cost thousands and thousands of dollars each time. Okay, so we've established that the EPA official is full of shit because they're cheating, at least in one home that we caught. Now, let's go to the next clip, Colin. That is, here's how the EPA is holding Norfolk Southern accountable.
To be fully protective of human health and the environment now and into the future.
Here's how EPA is holding Norfolk Southern accountable. On February 21st, EPA issued a unilateral administrative order to Norfolk Southern, including a number of directives to identify and clean up contaminated soil and water resources, to attend and participate in public meetings at EPA's request and to post information online, and ordering the company to pay EPA's costs for work performed under the order. All Norfolk Southern's work plans must be reviewed and approved by EPA and must outline all steps necessary to address the environmental damage caused by the derailment. If the company fails to complete any of EPA's ordered actions, the agency will immediately step in, conduct the necessary work, and then seek punitive damages at up to 3 times the cost. Throughout my weeks in East Palestine, I've seen that this is a proud and resilient community. East Palestine is going to be the greatest comeback story in American history, and EPA will be there with them every step of the way.
Joining me now, East Palestine resident Juja. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? The EPA says you're going to be the greatest comeback story in human history. I don't know if you heard anything before this, but they also were saying that the air testing is coming back smelling like roses, even though we've found instances that they're manipulating the data on the air testing. Norfolk Southern was not at this hearing. Not that they would say much of anything other than, whatever their lawyer tells them to say. But I don't know. I mean, she's basically saying that everything's fine. And it took a half hour by my count for them to even mention any of the symptoms residents are experiencing.
Yeah. The denial for the symptoms is still really weird to me because they keep saying it's all unrelated. Then why do we have a permanent clinic now that's going to be run by East Liverpool City Hospital for these unrelated symptoms? I don't think it's going to get any better, but I think they want to pretend like it's fine. That's why they're going to have this Easter egg hunt this weekend to give that image that everything's fine and totally normal here, nothing to see. I'm also concerned about them saying they're going to hold Norfolk responsible for not properly cleaning this up. However, Norfolk has contracted the place who's testing the soil, and EPA is doing split samples with them. And they're testing for these dioxins and comparing them to background levels that are less than 10 miles away. And they're only looking at the sites visually. They're only doing visual inspections for something that's microscopic, carried on the wind 6 weeks later after the rain. And it's contradicting the fact that they said there wasn't residue to begin with, because that's why all our stuff is still fine, because there wasn't residue. So how are they going to compare these background levels with residue that they see this long afterwards that's very, very small to see with the naked eye anyway, and then hold them responsible if they don't do it, yet they're the ones doing split sampling with their contractors.
Right. And also about that Easter egg hunt, Colin, I don't know, this might be out of order, but one of the Ohio EPA officials, she's the head of the state EPA, she talked about that, I think it's, hold on, let me find the clip. Soil. Where did she talk about the soil? Do you have the clip where she talked about the soil, Colin, and said it's kind of they didn't detect concerning levels of contamination?
Can you discuss EPA's role in water testing? The role of the agency in water testing?
To be fully protective of human health and the environment now and into the future, we are doing the following. Testing the municipal water supply on a weekly basis. In fact, today we will be taking our 8th round of weekly samples. We also test for sentinel wells that are located between the contaminated creeks and the municipal well fields, and additional sentinel wells are being strategically placed around town. Those test results have not shown any contamination related to the derailment. We're installing and sampling monitoring wells at the site of the derailment where chemicals were spilled to test for any contamination to groundwater. Ohio EPA, together with our federal response partners, have been overseeing removal of the soil from beneath the tracks, and we do not allow the railroad to rebuild the tracks until we confirm through multiple rounds of confirmation sampling that contaminated soil has been removed. US EPA has brought the most sophisticated technology available to continually monitor and ensure that the air we are all breathing in East Palestine is safe. In direct response to community feedback, we have undertaken a robust soil sampling effort. US EPA recently announced that soil samples collected at the park in the village did not show concerning levels of contamination.
That's what I wanted. So you have a 9-year-old. You must feel good when they say did not show concerning levels of contamination. I don't know. What are the levels? I'll decide if they're concerning. What are the levels? Because you're not saying. And Colin, if we have the clip, not the clip, the tweet from Andrew Welton. He is a Purdue University professor. He's been doing independent testing there. He was just there. And he said, based on what I saw experienced at the East Palestine Park this weekend, I urge officials to not hold an Easter egg hunt there. This is not the Onion, folks. They are holding an Easter egg hunt in a contaminated, toxic park that has a bunch of equipment in it because of the contamination. Contractors are still blowing chemical contamination into the air. It is not safe for children in the area. I sincerely urge them to find other options. So again, I don't know if this is just part of like, this is just what they have to say because this is the job and they have to cover this up, but they're not concerning levels of contamination. Well, why aren't you providing the data then? And according to an independent tester who's not on the payroll, just from being there, he's saying it's not safe.
Yeah, definitely. So I was at one of their science fairs the other day, and I was talking to a federal EPA agent about the data results back from these soil samples. He said they're going to be released to the public, but not for probably another 3 weeks to be verified. But in the meantime, why the hell are we having little kids here? At the very least. And also EPA in 2010 did studies that showed the cancer threshold was 3.7 parts per trillion for dioxins for the contamination. And so the soil samples that we do have back were from waste samples that went to Indiana, and it was just a mixed up bunch of dirt, and technically the sample should have been taking off the concentrated layer on top, but this was just a mix, and it was at 700 parts per trillion. We already knew that. So yeah, the whole mess of even the background levels in general. I mean, that's just like who has what amount of people need to die for it to be worth it for everyone.
And let me show the article what you're referring to. This is from The Guardian. Levels of carcinogenic chemical near Ohio derailment site far above safe limit. EPA scientists assessed a dioxin cancer risk threshold in 2010, but a federal cleanup is only triggered at far higher levels. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but newly released data shows soil in East Palestine contains dioxin levels hundreds of times greater than the exposure threshold above which the EPA scientists in 2010 found poses cancer risks. So that's what you were referring to. Though the dioxin level in East Palestine are below the federal action threshold, and an EPA administrator last week told Congress the levels were, quote, very low, chemical experts, including former EPA officials who reviewed the data, called them concerning. The levels found in 2 soil samples are also up to 14 times higher than dioxin soil limits in some other states. And the numbers point to wider contamination, said Linda Birnbaum, a former head of the toxicology program and EPA scientist. Quote, the levels are not screaming high, but we have confirmed that dioxins are in East Palestine soil. The EPA must test the soil in the area more broadly. And again, this is only 2 samples, so a lot more testing should be done. I want to go further down here. Regulators established the toxicity of dioxins in a soil sample by calculating the toxicity equivalence of all dioxins in the soil compared with the most toxic dioxin compound called 2378 TCDD. East Palestine soils showed levels of 2378 TCDD toxicity equivalents of 700 parts per trillion. The level at which the EPA will initiate a cleanup action in residential areas is 1,000. However, the cleanup triggers are much lower in many states, 90 parts per trillion in Michigan and 50 parts per trillion in California. In English, folks, because this can get a little complicated, and I've experienced this in Flint and other places. Unfortunately, because the EPA is really like the CDC, more about preserving economic development, a lot of these levels are bullshit, whether it be for lead in water, copper in water, dioxin in the air, in the soil. A lot of the measurements are not actually based on public health, but are based on corrosion control and corrosion measurements. And you know what? Let's just talk about lead, for example. They say that 15 parts per billion of lead in water is the quote action level. Well, you know, Zhuzha can be a athlete and have a great immune system, and maybe 15 parts per billion doesn't kill her. 7 parts per billion. If I get 7 parts per billion and I have a weak immune system, it could really, really fuck up my immune system and cause all sorts of other problems. Any good doctor will tell you everybody's different, but the acceptable level for lead is really 0. And when they're talking about, oh, well, in the case of the dioxins, the EPA threshold is 1,000. So East Palestine is fine because it's 700, but California is 90. Are you getting a pattern here that this is kind of haphazard and there's not one uniform rule? And by the way, the measurements are only from 2 samples that they took. So maybe those samples are only at 700, but other samples could be well over 1,000. I don't know. I'm a newborn father. I would not want my kid playing in a park in East Palestine, playing by a creek, or really being in East Palestine, period. I don't know I know this is not new to you because you've been dealing with this for nearly 2 months, but what is it like to hear these officials telling you everything's fine when it's very clear everything's not fine? I think we lost her audio.
How about now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I don't know how much you've heard of that, but it's terrifying because when you find out the worst part of the dioxin mess is Agent Orange, it's very unsettling. It's scary because that can, cause genetic mutations for generations. So it's pretty fucking serious. And getting these independent tests back and seeing all this other stuff that they're not talking about, that's concerning too, because they keep trying to minimize it and downsize. It feels like an abusive relationship, actually. And it feels like our government just abandoned us. Yeah, it's an awful feeling. It really is.
And before I let you go, because I know you're running around and connection's not great, but the fact that we're hearing from Congress and Norfolk Southern that they're going to do everything they can and they're reimbursing residents. I'm talking to residents that I'm hearing their phone calls with Norfolk Southern, and Norfolk Southern is penny pinching them. There seems to be delays in getting reimbursement. Residents are making the case that for what you're going to offer me, for what you're going to reimburse me for 2 months at a hotel, just pay off the rest of my mortgage, which is the same amount. They're saying no. I know you've had one hell of an experience dealing with Norfolk Southern. Can you kind of correct the record that Norfolk Southern is, doing the right thing and reimbursing anyone there who wants to be reimbursed?
Yeah, no, it's all a big show. It's all a big joke. They're telling us what, they're saying what they want. I'm sorry, my brain's just not even working right now. They're saying what we want to hear. They're not doing that though. They're very much choosing who they want to help, how they want to help. All of it's different. It depends on the day of the week, who you talk to. And you have to go in there and beg for it. You absolutely have to beg for the bare minimum, and they throw breadcrumbs at us and expect a pat on the back, and all they just keep doing is talking about how much money they spent. And in reality, it's only covered really my hotel stays, and it's not convenient to live in a hotel, and they're not reimbursing for anything else in my house. And I find out that they're apparently just taking all the money they're giving us right now off of our future lawsuits anyway. So it's like we're begging for our own money, really, in that sense. Yeah, they really make you feel like a piece of shit when you go down there, and you have to spend the whole day there, like waiting like it's a soup kitchen. Like it's awful.
And from a health standpoint, I know, like, I think this was like 2 weeks ago, you went back to your house, and could you talk about the smell? I mean, there was almost like boiling little bubbles on your doors. Talk about your house.
So it still has a white residue outside on the porch. I'm being told that resembles chlorine from people who have worked with large amounts of chlorine. The house still smells like diesel to me. It smells like you're in, a shitty gas station, but it's your living room. So yeah, still very much unsafe.
And I know you guys have a town hall coming up this week, not this weekend, this afternoon, but talk about the media. I mean, we've been trying to keep this in the news. National media gone. The local media is kind of covering it, but really just kind of regurgitating whatever the governor says or, politicians say. Do you feel like there's enough coverage on this, that there's coverage that's actually accurate to what you're experiencing? Because I think that's one of the biggest problems here is when the media just moves on, you guys are left to just be victims of the narrative.
Yeah, so personally, I've been trying to figure out my living situation and helping my son do his online school. So I haven't caught up with everything in the media right now. I know that it has died down. And I know a lot of the stories are very vague and really brief, and they don't really, they do just kind of regurgitate what the governor is saying. So Norfolk actually was supposed to be at this meeting later, and I don't know if you've heard yet, but they backed out. Shocker. So there are supposed to be some media channels there tonight. I don't know if they're still going to be coming once Norfolk's not showing or what. I guess we'll see, but yeah, it is concerning, especially because the ones that have covered on it, it's just like really brief and it doesn't really, say what's actually happening here. And it feels very insulting to hear Norfolk keep saying how much they're doing because they're not doing anything, like really at all.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by that, but it's interesting you say that because when Ashley, who was one of the residents, I guess, involved with the town hall, when she told me that the Norfolk Southern person like committed that they would come and they would be there, I said, I would not count on it. Maybe they're saying it now, and maybe he really wants to, but when he runs it up the totem pole, my guess is they would back out. Unfortunately, that's what's happened. But I also heard a recording of a call between a resident at Norfolk Southern where they were literally telling the resident, we're working with thousands of people and everybody seems happy and everything's going smooth. So this is just one big, literally gaslighting situation. And I don't think, not to make it too political, but it's not just the governor. I mean, the president has not been there. He would certainly be on the ground for tornado, hurricane, but for whatever reason, he's not coming there. The EPA in this hearing is saying that they've kind of taken more of a lead role. Well, if that's the case, why is Norfolk Southern still involved at all in testing? It's crazy.
That's what I want to know.
Because you would, if somebody burned down your house, would you put them in charge of rebuilding it?
Exactly.
All right, I'll let you go. I know you're really busy. I hope you and your son are doing okay, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Sure. So that's a bit of breaking news. Didn't know this because I was live, but if you were following at the beginning of the stream, I told you that they're having a town hall. I think it's at 4:30 in East Palestine. And Norfolk Southern was supposed to be there. I was pretty sure they were going to back out, and they have backed out. So this is why I have this flag behind me. A lot of you ask, what's with the flag? And a lot of you like it. We live in the United Corporations of America. Corporations are allowed to poison you. They're allowed to fucking kill you. They're allowed to fucking detonate their trains in your community and then go before Congress, lie, give vague bullshit answers. have their PR people and lawyers drum up statements and then back out when nobody's looking. I mean, that's what's going on here. There is zero accountability for what's going on here. And by the way, Norfolk Southern to permanently, if Juza and some of the other residents we've spoken with on camera and residents we've spoken with off camera, if they want to be permanently moved, which is their decision, oh my God, it's nothing to ease. It's nothing to Norfolk Southern to pay for 4,500 residents if the whole fucking town would want to permanently relocate. It is nothing compared to the stock buybacks they gave last year. But they're not going to do it just like the same reason that Biden wouldn't cancel all of the student loan debt. The same reason they won't do Medicare for all. Because they don't want to open up Pandora's box. They don't want to give an example. They don't want to set a precedent of corporations actually doing the right thing. They don't want to set an example of corporate polluters, because most of the big corporations are polluters, of actually, once they contaminate a community or poison the wildlife or desecrate land, actually cleaning it up, making the residents whole, and then some. Because if they did it for East Palestine, there's going to be there's an expectation you're going to have to do it for others. That's why people like Juza are having to beg. And Colin, do we have that clip from Candace? Lewis was interviewing Candace, where she talks about that she had to go before Norfolk Southern and literally beg. This is a woman, a mother of 5 in East Palestine. After the Norfolk Southern train derailment and uncontrolled burn, you had her son had respiratory issues. They had to get decontamination showers before a doctor would see them, chemical bronchitis, chemical burns. And this woman had to go and beg Norfolk Southern and cry for reimbursement. If you have that clip, Colin.
The fact that Norfolk Southern buried all of these contaminants underneath the train tracks to get the tracks open again, and hopefully for them to try to hide it. And now, now that they're digging it all back up again, they're like, oh, well, we'll offer to relocate you for a little bit again. And go ahead.
Well, I think that they actually were forced. I mean, at the last town hall, there was a gentleman that stood up, and it's so impactful to me. He stood there and said, for the love of God, get my people out of here. And I was screaming the same thing in my heart. Get us out of here. And no one should still be there. There should not be one single person in that town except the people that are there testing, cleaning, and they are in hazmat suit and full respirators. No one should be there. And like me, yes, I am lucky, but I went in there to that Norfolk Southern and I had to beg. And I did beg, because you know what? My children's lives matter. And if I have to go and beg somebody for money, which I don't like to take money, but I can't even get my own money. I can't even get my own equity on my own home from the bank. I don't want their money, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to beg for it so that I know that my children are not being poisoned. I cannot live with myself. And the sad thing is a lot of people are accepting what the EPA is saying, what these government agents are saying, and they are not being truthful. And these people 10 years, maybe even sooner than that, 5 years down the road, their kids are going to get sick and they are never going to be able to forgive themselves.
No, and it's so tough because you want to believe in the EPA. You know what I mean? You think, when you think of the EPA, and I was warned a little bit going into this. My boss Jordan has covered the water crisis in Flint, Michigan for almost 9 years at this point. And he was like, no, you'd be surprised, some of the stuff that they pulled there, it wouldn't shock me to see some of the same stuff here. And lo and behold, we're seeing a lot of these same things being done. Yeah.
They have failed us. They are endangering people's lives, and it is mind-blowing. I didn't think that the United States of America worked like this. I thought that we had a country that, helped the U.S. citizens. We are not being helped. We are being left to die in a...
I don't care if you're progressive. I don't care if you're conservative. I don't care if you're neoliberal. I don't care if you're politically agnostic. This is a scandal. Just imagine for a second. I don't know, 270 people watching. Smash that like button so we can get more people. I'm sure some of you live by, chemical plants, railroad tracks, some form of a corporation that pollutes, pipelines that carry crude oil, whatever the case may be. It could happen to anybody that there's an explosion or a spill or something that contaminates your home, contaminates you, makes you sick, makes your house value plummet so you can't even sell your house and get half the value for what you bought it with. You are a victim in that case. But these folks are not being treated as victims. They're being treated as almost like little, cockroaches under Norfolk Southern's shoe. And our government is allowing it. By the way, these congressional politicians that are holding hearings, do they not have staffers that can research what media coverage is out there? Because those staffers could have researched Status Coup. The January 6th committee used some of our footage from John Farina, who was on the ground on January 6th. He was the first journalist live. He's the one who got that historic footage of the police officer's head rammed into the door. The January 6th committee used it a lot. Are they not researching what investigative reporting is being done here so that they could then challenge these EPA officials who are lying? I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Colin, I know we went a little out of order, but I want to play some more of the clips from this conference. Let's go with here's how the EPA is holding Norfolk Southern accountable.
We're making progress in the removal of chemicals from
Congressman Johnson, Vice Chairman Joyce, Ranking Member Tonko, and members of the Environment, Manufacturing, and Critical Materials Subcommittee. I am Dr. Wesley Vins, and I am the Health Commissioner of the Columbiana County General Health District. I thank you for the opportunity to speak about the East Palestine train derailment on behalf of the residents of Columbiana County.
We're making progress in the removal of chemicals from Sulphur Run and Leslie Run. We know those creeks are contaminated.
I think we already played that one, actually.
So go back to the one from Deborah Shore. She's the older EPA official. I don't think we played that one where she says, here's how we're holding them accountable. Oh, no, you know what? You're right. Let's play the one. Let me see. Go. I want to play this one again. To be fully protective.
To be fully protective. Okay. One moment.
Protective of human health and the environment now and into the future, we are doing the following. Testing the municipal water supply on a weekly basis. In fact, today we will be taking our 8th round of weekly samples. We also test 4 sentinel wells that are located between the contaminated creeks and the municipal well fields, and additional sentinel wells are being strategically placed around town. Those test results have not shown any contamination related to the derailment. We're installing and sampling monitoring wells at the site of the derailment where chemicals were spilled to test for any contamination to groundwater. Ohio EPA, together with our federal response partners, have been overseeing removal of the soil from beneath the tracks, and we do not allow the railroad to rebuild the tracks until we confirm through multiple rounds of confirmation sampling that contaminated soil has been removed. US EPA has brought the most sophisticated technology available to continually monitor and ensure that the air we are all breathing in East Palestine is safe. In direct response to community feedback, we have undertaken a robust soil sampling effort. US EPA recently announced that soil samples collected at the park in the village did not show concerning levels of contamination.
Okay, few problems there. Number one, when she says we're on our, I think it was 18th water testing, because they make clear we're testing the city water, but we're also testing wells. Okay, well, they did a whole thing that there's no way that the city water is contaminated. Actually, Colin, do you have that other clip too? This one. Can you discuss the EPA's role with water testing? No, has this derailment caused? Yeah, that one.
Do you believe that this derailment has caused any threats to human health in the communities treated drinking water?
Congressman Balderson, thank you for the question. If I can show my visual aid that I use with the community, I'd like to. I want to acknowledge that this has been obviously a traumatic event for the community, and what we're doing is everything we can, as Ms. Shore said, to remove any contamination so it never does. But we'll keep testing. And I want to say that the reason that we have been able to say that the municipal drinking water is safe is based on an Ohio EPA map that pre-exists the derailment. This is the source water protection map. So the municipal well field is right here, if folks can see that big well in the blue. So the derailment happened way over here, 1.5 miles away from the well field. And we know how the water flows, down this way, down the creeks. So the derailment would not have affected the municipal water source, and we knew that very quickly after the derailment. So thank you for letting me bring my visual aid. And, I want to be clear, though, that we're not going to stop testing to make sure that there will be no effects in the long term.
Oh, thank you for letting me bring my little map, my little visual aid. Oh, yeah? If the municipal water cannot be contaminated because the derailment happened far away from the municipal water, which, by the way, for those of you who have been watching Status Coup and Lewis is reporting, they put up temporary dams that have been overflowing repeatedly. These dams are overflowing with contaminated water. It's overflowing right above, like no gap between where the water is overflowing and groundwater wells. And it is also close to, say it, the municipal water. But if the municipal water is fine, can this, the director of the Ohio EPA, explain to me? Maybe I should run for office so I could ask these fuckers the questions. Let's show the pictures of Kristen Battaglia, if you have that tweet with her images, Colin, that we have from a while ago. So this is Kristen, 37 years old, is a mother. I think her kid is 8. This was her about a week before the derailment. And let's see her about 2 or 3 weeks after the derailment. I don't know if you could zoom in or make that bigger, Colin. So that is her face after taking a shower. She is on municipal water from the city. You see that? By the way, that is, they call it a rash. So it's a chemical burn. That's what that is. Do you have the other one too? So you could see it's pretty scattered across her face, forehead, cheeks. There's also burns on her legs. I think that was the second tweet that show the burns on her legs and feet. The second tweet under that one. So right there, I mean, you got her thigh, her knee, her feet. That's from the shower. Can we show the first tweet and what she said? My face was burning, but it didn't freak me out until I looked in the mirror. Yeah. Connected to the city water. Nothing wrong with the city water, though. By the way, this was from, I think, March 7th. So a couple weeks ago. Maybe the water's a little better now. I don't know. But that's a resident connected to the city water. By the way, same week that those pictures are from, she had to take her son to the emergency room because, like half of the town, he's having nosebleeds. But the water's fine. The water's fine. And our wonderful, brave, courageous congressmen and women are asking the tough questions. They're following up, asking about, what about this resident here? There's reports from this outlet, and we're not the only outlet that interviewed her. And the face doesn't lie. Her leg doesn't lie. Yes, great point, Carls. And Aaron Brockovich makes this point. Water moves. You could test water at 2:53 Eastern time. That's the time right now. And it could be fine. And then if you tested it 2-3 hours later, you're going to find high contamination levels. Colin, come on for a second. This is Godzilla, by the way. He's taken over for Colin. Does that water look fine? The testing looks fine that resident is getting chemical burns?
Oh, it must be, obviously, if you can't believe your lying eyes, obviously, at this point. And like when I was there with Lewis, which was a month and a half later, we were still smelling stuff, and Lewis actually got pretty sick. And I think after I left, he even got even more sick after being there. And we were only there for 5 days max. I think Lewis was there. And so I can't imagine how this feels for residents who actually live there and then have to listen to the EPA repeatedly say, no, you're fine.
Or the EPA, oh, this is going to be America's best comeback story ever. Oh, good God. All right. Thank you, Godzilla. It's absolutely batshit. And by the way, that's only one resident. We've reported and showed visuals of other residents with rashes, residents that were on well water and residents that were on city water. It's just disgusting. It's inhumane what's being done here. And, you know, some people might say, well, Jordan, you guys are covering this a lot, because this is not just about East Palestine. And the same reason I always say why I cover Flint so much. It's not just about Flint. This is about what kind of country do we live in? Do we live in a country where if your government or corporate America, and really they're one and the same at this point, the government or corporate America poisons you and your kids, do you actually help them? Do you make them whole because they didn't poison themselves? Or do you cover it up and leave them to slowly or quickly die? Because obviously it's the second one. And if you're a journalist, you shouldn't be neutral to people being sacrificial lambs in the wealthiest country on earth. You should not be neutral to people being sacrificed at the altar of Norfolk Southern. It's disgusting. Right now, what is the media? I mean, of course, there was another school shooting yesterday. I'm not minimizing that. I wish that was covered for longer than 2 days. It'll probably not be covered past today. 3 children were killed, including 3 adults. But I don't know. CNN's owned by AT&T, $1 billion company. Do they have enough resources to continue covering this? You think MSNBC, NBC News, owned by Comcast, has enough resources to keep covering this? You think the New York Times has some of the wealthiest investors, including a billionaire oil man, has enough resources to keep covering this? You think independent media? Let's call out independent media while we're at it. They might not have resources to go on the ground. We barely have resources to go on the ground. It's thanks to you, our viewers, and those who pay per month or annually to fund us, Status Coup members. That's statuscoup.com/join. If you're not a member yet, please sign up, because that's what's helping us fund this. But independent outlets, they could cover it on an ongoing basis, even if they're not able to go on the ground. They could interview residents just like I just did, remotely. They could pick up the phone and call residents and find out what's going on. They could get pictures from residents showing their rashes and other things. Why don't they do that? I guess because it doesn't provide the views that they want. They're more interested in covering Ben Shapiro and putting his name in a headline, or Jordan Peterson and putting his name in a headline, or name your fucking douchebag conservative, or covering the latest food fight between this YouTuber and this YouTuber. And I like a good food fight from time to time, and we all need some entertainment and popcorn-worthy content from time to time. But Jesus Christ, Americans are being poisoned. It's covered for a week, and then we move on. It's crazy. All right, now let's move on to the doctor. We haven't shown this clip totally. Hold on. I think it's which clip is this? Actually, let's play this one. We're making progress.
We're making progress in the removal of chemicals from Sulphur Run and Leslie Run. We know those creeks are contaminated, but we were encouraged that earlier this month, we found sensitive aquatic life, such as hellbender salamanders, downstream of the derailment. To provide assurance to farmers and to customers of farms in the area, the Ohio Department of Agriculture will be testing forage crops, grasses, and other agricultural products. The Departments of Agriculture and Natural Resources in Ohio have found no evidence of any chemical-related deaths in any terrestrial animals. The steps that we are taking right now to remove the contamination from East Palestine are designed to ensure that there will be no prolonged chemical exposure to anyone in the village.
Ah, boy. Okay. She says everything's coming up roses. She mentioned Sulphur Run. Sulphur Run is one of the creeks that's contaminated. Colin, let's show the tweet. This is from Andrew Welton. He's, again, the Purdue University professor. He is a professor of engineering, I believe. He's been doing independent testing there. He said this was, what's the date on this tweet? I think it was last week, March 24th, maybe? Yeah, so this was Friday. Go up a little bit. Visited a home today along Sulphur Run. It's still contaminated. After moving rocks, the PID read 2.1 parts per million, not parts per billion, coming off the creek. Background in the air was 0 to 3 parts per billion. And if you could show that, play the video if you can. That is Sulphur Run as of Friday. You see those rainbow-looking chemicals? They're not Pride. They're not for LGBT month. That's contamination, and that's from Friday. Yet, the EPA the Ohio EPA official, we're making progress in uncontaminating the toxic creek, which, by the way, for weeks, the state, the governor, the state EPA allowed children to play by the contaminated creek, where they were inhaling God knows what for weeks. I think it was almost a month into this that the federal EPA director, Regan, said, yeah, I advise children not to play by this contaminated creek. Well, thank you, after allowing them to be inhaling toxins, which are probably going to cause them cancer in a few years, for weeks. And they finally put up signs saying, do not play by here. So you have this state EPA official saying, hey, we're making progress in uncontaminating this. Well, that's an independent. You seeing a pattern that the independent people not on the payroll of the EPA or the state EPA or Norfolk Southern, they're somehow finding contamination that the EPA and the state EPA are not? It's always interesting how that happens. Play the next one, Congressman Johnson.
Congressman Johnson, Vice Chairman Joyce, Ranking Member Tonko, and members of the Environment, Manufacturing, and Critical Materials Subcommittee. I am Dr. Wesley Vins, and I am the Health Commissioner of the Columbiana County General Health District. I thank you for the opportunity to speak about the East Palestine train derailment on behalf of the residents of Columbiana County and our Board of Health. I have served the local community for 14 years as Health Commissioner, and I'm very familiar with the local perspectives, community concerns, and family needs relating to the February 3rd Norfolk Southern train derailment. Thankfully, the derailed train fire is out and the smoke is cleared, but the ongoing concerns for health effects and environmental impacts to drinking water remain within the community. In addition to requesting their private wells to be tested, residents have expressed concerns about immediate health issues of sore throats, headaches, and anxiety, as well as unknown long-term health conditions, including the development of cancer. To address some of the most immediate health concerns of the residents, our agency has partnered with the Ohio Department of Health and the East Liverpool City Hospital to establish a health assessment clinic at the well-known First Church of Christ near downtown East Palestine that also includes a 38-foot mobile clinic unit from the local federally qualified health center.
Okay, there's more of that. It's absurd. First of all, how quickly into a congressional hearing on the poisoning of a community, how quickly do you think they should bring up symptoms that residents are experiencing? First thing discuss, couple minutes.
Congressman Johnson, Vice Chair.
10 minutes in. By my count, the first mention of health symptoms or even questions about it or even statements about it was a half hour into this. And he is, I think, the health director of Columbiana County, which is East Palestine is part of Columbiana County. He mentioned sore throats, headaches, and anxiety. Sore throats, headaches, and anxiety. We've been covering this extensively. This is 53 days after this derailment. He left out a few things. Dizziness, nosebleeds, bloody noses in children and adults, chemical burns, vomiting, resident shaking, chemical bronchitis. Not that sore throats and headaches are not relevant. They are. But why is the health supervisor of the county only mentioning sore throats and headaches, which are not nothing, but are not as severe as nosebleeds, are not as severe as chemical bronchitis, are not as severe as projectile vomiting, which we've heard from residents, not as severe as feeling under the influence, which residents have described, the feeling of feeling drunk. Interesting that he only mentioned those three things, and anxiety, which, let's be clear, there is a huge mental health component to this. I mean, just the trauma from the health symptoms and seeing your kids sick, and you, if you're an adult, being sick, and then having to add on, having to relocate your kids, if you have animals, to a hotel, uproot your life, decisions of having to pull your kids out of school. I mean, the mental health component of this is just as serious. But this is the health supervisor just mentioning a few things that are less severe? Yes, downplaying the severity, for sure. Absolutely. Let's play the clip of Ashley. That's after that on the sheet, Colin.
I believe you talked with Jordan a little bit about a friend of yours who's been getting some rashes and whatnot too. So you have several folks that you know who are starting to experience this now. And I know I spoke with a lot of folks getting rashes. I guess, is that something that's still prevalent today? We're now basically almost 5 weeks away, 5 weeks out from when this happened, and that's still prevalent.
It seems like it's getting worse too. So I mean, even the nosebleeds and everything is getting worse as well. Or more people are noticing it, and especially with them tearing up everything right now. You can kind of hear it in the background. They're moving the dirt around. Earlier when it wasn't snowing, it wasn't as cold. I was starting to have the burning nose just riding in my car down the street.
Right. Fortunately, it's like a little bit windy right now, and I think it's coming from not necessarily the right direction. So we're okay for the moment, at least. But yeah, definitely. I mean, you can hear. I don't know if the audio will pick it up, but you can take my word for it too. We can hear the construction vehicles moving back and forth, not far away from where we're at right now.
Well, that was, I think, 2 weeks ago. It's getting worse. The nosebleeds and other issues. It wasn't depicted that way by the EPA officials or by the health official of Columbia County, was it now? I think that's every clip I wanted to show. I think we've showed them all. Colin, can we show the clip that we posted from earlier on Twitter? I think we put up this video over the weekend because there's also a component of Pennsylvania residents that are getting the go around here. where Pennsylvania residents were a couple miles away from this. That dark plume traveled to them, and they are either getting rejected for reimbursement by Norfolk Southern or having to beg and scream. Let's play the clip of Lewis after that hearing with those residents.
Kristen, we're in Darlington, Pennsylvania. We're halfway through a meeting here with several of the Pennsylvania state representatives. I saw you in the back here with this. I'm just curious, first off, I guess, what your take on all of this is, and why you're actually out here today to come see this?
Well, I applauded the last representative when she said, we have no control over our federal railways.
I have dealt with Norfolk Southern in my capacity as Borough Council President, and I was told in no uncertain terms by multiple different Pennsylvania departments. I've heard from DCED, from PUC, from PennDOT, that we've given away our power to do anything about these railroads. And when it was mentioned earlier that the quote from Norfolk Southern was, "We have over 200 years of experience," I was told we gave away our rights 200 years ago, actually was the quote that I was told in trying to deal with Norfolk Southern from a local government perspective. I was very struck and shocked and a little bit horrified earlier when it was mentioned that we have Department of Environmental Protection, we have emergency management, we have all of these different layers of things working together, focusing on statistical models, et cetera. But ultimately, it sounds as if the decision about what to do was just made by Norfolk Southern.
I mean, Norfolk Southern is dictating everything to us, and this is a public service announcement that was put out at 3:16, and it said just to evacuate a mile. So this is 4.3 miles. This is my house. We got another alert at 15:46, which is 4:45. I believe they ignited the train car around 4:15 or 4:10 or so. And this is from the top of my hill. We are 4.3 miles away. We are not in this mile or the 2 mile. And it is our understanding that it was the evacuation for the mile to 2 mile was because if the train car exploded and there was metal and debris flying.
Yep.
So this is the rest of my house from the window, and so my windows were all taped up and plasticed because I didn't have time to evacuate.
Right.
And so after this, I sheltered in place in the basement, and stayed there for probably 8 to 10 hours just to make sure. Watched the beef cattle that were in our pasture, making sure that they were still alive. I mean, this is a disaster. It's not a drill, and somebody needs to be accountable. And I think we're as a public and as a township and as the people who are concerned are very smart and very educated, and we're not going to stand for this.
Right.
So I appreciate everybody that's coming out and stuff, but it needs to be addressed now. It's almost 7 weeks this has happened.
Right. Clearly, it is ridiculous that this hasn't been taken as seriously as it definitely deserves to be.
Right.
You can clearly see in a lot of these photos here that this clearly went right over your house and your property.
Right. And then over here, you don't even see the flag waving in the wind. There was no wind. Like he said, the DEP said that they waited, and then there was the shelf that hovered over, so then the smoke stayed in the area. So yeah, we didn't see birds for a couple of weeks. We looked at our streams and our ponds. There's no tadpoles. There's nothing.
Right.
And
you mentioned you have livestock. I mean, that's a big concern. We've heard a lot of people talking about dioxin and the potential effects of if your livestock are grazing in a field. I don't know that your situation where you are. If this stuff settles in the dirt and in the soil there and the grass is growing with it or any crops, it's potentially going to, impact the meat that the cattle's producing, if it's a dairy cow, potentially into milk and whatnot. Right. I don't know if you do this commercially, if it's more for yourself, but either way, I mean, are you concerned about using your livestock in the future for food?
I know that the gentleman that has his livestock on our property is extremely concerned. He's there's a team of farmers of beef cattle that have gotten together, and they're just tired of the disinformation that keeps on coming out from everywhere. I mean, you go over to Ohio to the Norfolk Southern table, and they're like, "No, you're from PA. We don't need to deal with you." Like, where are we supposed to go? We had a township meeting last night, Darlington Townships, and our supervisors do an excellent job, but they are getting nowhere.
Right.
Norfolk Southern just turns them away. They say no. You know, we had people that were evacuated that are in Darlington in that mile radius. They go to get refunded. They say, no, you're from PA. Yeah. So it's
and it's frankly, even for some folks in Ohio, I mean, I've talked to tons of folks in Ohio even who are like right on that line, right on the mile-ish line, who are clearly affected by this, and Norfolk Southern won't help them at all.
But it wasn't even, so the mile line doesn't even make sense because it was just because of the metal. If the
car explodes, metal's going to go all over the place.
The wind, I mean, you can tell just today how windy it is. But, I mean, that was from the top of our hill. We saw that. And then when it started to come over, I was like, I'm saving my life and my dog's life. You know what I mean? And it's just something that is regrettable that it happened, but yet again, it's a federal railway. We should have federal protections, like the last representative said. Stop letting Norfolk Southern take the lead on everything. Like I heard in the Senate hearings that they said that Norfolk Southern didn't even consult the company that put the vinyl chloride in the car. And what was their suggestion to do with it? They didn't even do that.
And again, we heard here today and also a little bit during the Senate hearing that, you know, initially it sounded like they were going to do the quote unquote controlled burn with the one car, but then at the last minute, they shifted it to 5. And it's like that there's a major difference in doing that with one car that maybe would have needed it to be done versus setting 5 of them on fire, and also not giving folks, to your point, like the correct warning about this and what actually could happen.
I do actually, in there, I brought the brochure from the Beaver County radiation nuclear plant. If there's a disaster there, they have a 20-mile radius of an evacuation procedure and stuff. Why didn't PA ignite this at 8 o'clock in the morning that day and say, we will take the lead. This is a hazardous material. It's almost as bad as radiation. This is what we need to do. They are set up to do plans post hazardous derailment. Why are they not involved? They're only 20 miles from here. So it goes a long way that everybody has got to start to communicate. You know, hunting and fishing, huge around here. That's people's staple food, especially with the way inflation is, that you can't afford to go out to the grocery store.
And I think that's missed also by a lot of folks. Like a lot of the media covering this is from the coast. They're not hunters. They don't understand that, like, you know, your whole family will go out and hunt. You put, you know, save the deer meat in the freezer. You eat it throughout the year. Like that's a huge missing piece to this is hunting, the agricultural side of it.
It is. I totally agree. I totally agree.
Hopefully we start to see, I mean, I'm frankly not holding my breath for it, but hopefully we see some folks. There were a couple representatives asking some good questions in there, which is a good start. Unfortunately, I think some of this is going to have to come at the federal level.
So that's one resident from Pennsylvania. There's other residents from Pennsylvania. Lewis has done, you know, kind of a mix of both on his second trip. He spoke with a couple of residents from Pennsylvania because obviously, you know, the immediate area in East Palestine was most affected, but literally there's folks like 500 feet over the border that have been affected. You know, it's just, I didn't really see a lot of focus on the folks in Pennsylvania either in this hearing. We got a lot more, but I got to do a couple things before our second live stream of the day. We'll be live again at our normal time at 5 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have Stephen Donziger on. For those that have followed Status Coup, we've covered Stephen's story extensively. He was a human rights attorney, is a human rights attorney that won a $9.5 billion judgment against Chevron, who the fossil fuel company poisoned the Amazon, specifically in Ecuador, causing cancer and a lot of disease and sickness of the indigenous people of Ecuador. Instead of paying the $9.5 billion, Chevron decided to pay millions to go on a wholly corporate political crusade against Stephen Donziger. As a result, and some bought-off judges, in my opinion, Stephen Donziger was made to be under house arrest for several years and then federal prison for several months. He was freed about a year ago out of house arrest and has been free. But he tried to get his contempt of court conviction, which also led to his disbarment as a lawyer, up to the Supreme Court. Yesterday, the Supreme Court decided not to hear his appeal. He went all the way up to the Supreme Court with his appeal. The Supreme Court decided not to. Ironically, it was two conservative judges who dissented and wanted to go ahead with hearing the case. So it was I believe, 7-2 decision with two of the conservative judges dissenting in favor of hearing Stephen Donziger's appeal. So we'll have Donziger on at 5 o'clock Eastern to get his reaction. We'll also have Steve Grumbine on after that. Let me read some super chats if I missed any. Thank you, Tony D. $2. Status Coup is my #1 news source. Appreciate that. Momo, $11. Nice haircut. Thanks for your hard work. Thank you. Melissa, $5. Where do I get one of them flags? Thank you for all you do. I got it at Adbusters, adbusters.com, adbusters.com, adbusters.com. $20. Cat, super sticker. Thank you. We didn't get any member signups, so I hope if you were watching and you are on the fence, I hope you'll get off the fence and sign up as a Status Coup member. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month. It makes a huge difference. That's how we're going to send Lewis back to East Palestine and continue to report in East Palestine and other areas that are being poisoned by our government or corporate America. Because make no mistake, if we don't continue covering this, particularly on the ground, these people will slowly die and it will be completely abandoned as a news story. The corporate media has already abandoned it. And frankly, the independent media is not covering them much either. So thank you for watching this early live stream. Again, we'll be back at 5 o'clock Eastern with other stories and Stephen Donziger. See you at 5 o'clock Eastern.